Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for choosing to spend your afternoon here with us. For those who don't know, I'm Patricia Faber, and I do a podcast show to help people maximise property values. It's called Maximising Property Values. It's on all the popular platforms: Apple, Spotify, YouTube, from Google, Audible, etc. That, however, usually is a monologue where I do a podcast every month, just once a month, on the first of the month. But I also have some fabulous people who come onto my podcast and they tell us about what they're doing. And I call that the guest series, which I started about 2 years ago. And my guest today is Suzie Cole. So, Suzie, welcome to Maximising Property Values.
Oh, thank you
Now,
very much. Lovely to be here, and lovely that we met in person as well recently,
I
wasn't it?
know. Do you know, Suzie? So you're new to Clubhouse, so I won't make you do that just yet, or at all even. But we have something that we call a room chat, where people can actually put they can write their comments, and everyone can read what they've written. And already there are a couple of complimentary things about you. But before we go there, so Suzie is the proprietress of the Good Property Company. So, Susannah is a successful UK property investor. She started her first business at the age of 22. And Susannah started in property at the kitchen table with a mobile phone, a computer, and a kettle. The kettle was the most used business tool in the first couple of years. Breaking out of the corporate lifestyle, she followed her dreams and took the risk to set up a Good Property Company, which she has now been running for a while, a long time. She ran a business sourcing over £45 million worth of property and built a multi-million pound property portfolio in Bristol and one little flat in Glasgow when her son went to college there. And she also ran a successful buy to sell strategy. Suzie now runs 2 high quality property mentoring groups, a flagship live group, and an online, both with weekly accountability directly from Suzie, and she has many successful graduates. Suzie does a lot in property, but I will let Suzie tell us a bit more about herself after I've asked her these questions. Now, Suzie, I am so sorry because I should have warned you in advance that so no one who's been a guest has ever been given their questions in advance.
I
And
I was listening earlier to some of your other ones, so I hear you. I'm looking forward to it.
but I'm going to be so nice. I'm not going to ask you any awful or awkward questions, especially since this is your first time on Clubhouse. So I'm just going to ask you property related ones. I think. Let's
Please,
see how it
you're
goes.
welcome. I'm learning fast, and everybody's helping me learn, which is lovely. So I've now spotted the comments. New technology is fab, isn't it? So I don't mind. You can ask easy questions, difficult questions. Hopefully, I'll be able to answer for you.
I know that you will be able to. I know you will be able to. So, I was just saying before you joined that it's very rare to meet somebody who's very passionate about property and who's also in the educational field. Lots of people in the educational field, loads of people, and a lot of them are very passionate but not about property. And I was just saying to people that, in you, I found that the both actually aligned. And that is why I'm just so delighted to actually have you on this podcast today. But let me start with my easy questions. So, Susannah, can you no, this one I think is so apt for you. What do you see as a difference, or what differences do you see in the PRS? So that's the private rented sector of property, for those who don't know, from when you were 22, when you started, and now. So that's your first question.
The slow, steady professionalization of it, which to a degree has been forced by regulation and legislation, and the majority of that I don't disagree with. So, um, all the stuff, all this, we know this, guys. Like for example, I've got a bunch of student HMOs, and because I have kids, my kids are in their 20s now and in their 30s. I am really aware that I am housing people's kids, even though they're grown up. I still think of them as kids. And so I'm quite okay with HMO people, the council coming in and saying, right, kiddo, to me, you've paid your HMO license. Now we're going to inspect and we're going to make sure that this property is high safety level. Because then I am trying my best endeavor anyway to make sure it's correct. All the things like making sure your CO2 detectors are changed, your heads on your smoke alarms and your smoke detectors are changed, every 10 years, all of that stuff. But I kind of don't mind somebody else coming in and either going, whoa, couple of little things, door closers, or yes, for clean bill of health, because actually I find that quite an assistance, not an irritation. So that whole professionalization, I think, isn't a bad thing, and it makes me more comfortable. I mean, I'm pretty paranoid about things like fire safety and stuff like that because there's so many fires every year. So it makes me more comfortable. I know everybody grumps and grumbles, and yes, I've had to pay thousands of pounds extra for HMO licenses. Yes, I have. And we know it's a bit of a backward tax grab. We know that, we hear that. But the reality is, by getting inspected and either being given with me, usually it's a very short shift of work. It's like I got one the other day and it was like, can you repaint this windowsill? And I was thinking, oh, my darling, that's just a little bit too far gone. But yeah, of course, we'll paint the windowsill. But where, my honeybee, dear lovely council, does that impact on safety? You're earning your stripes here, but no big deal. We'll paint the windowsill. That's fine. But I don't mind being inspected for safety stuff. I'm really good about that. I'm really happy about that. So that stuff I think is a plus because we are housing people's families. um so it's really that whole trend towards the professionalization, and I know there's lots of scaremongering, and section 24 is, let's not waste any time in it apart from to say it's wholly unacceptable. We spent 15 years building a multi-million pound property portfolio and then you get whacked with section 24. But the reality is there is a move towards the professionalization. So the if you can stay ahead of that and embrace it, your properties will become safer and safer. Fabulous. Not difficulty, the risk, if you like, is you can see that what clearly is trying to happen is legislating small individual hard to manage landlords out of the industry and legislating group landlords, like major student blocks or insurance companies buying up, massive, big property blocks. They're effectively being legislated in. So we're moving from individual people to companies, but we know that, we see that.
Wow, Susie, I love how you've just said it. And before you came on here, I was waxing about, how you just absolutely are passionate about what you do. And like you say, nobody minds about being, reminded or being helped to do with, safety. We all want to be safe. We all want to be providing properties that are safe for our tenants to live in. And nobody, well, no one that I know anyway, so, thank goodness for that, would want a fire at all, or let alone a fire where somebody actually dies, or or is injured. So that side of things is always welcome by, I think, very responsible landlords like yourself. Like, people in this room, people who are usually in these rooms, Susanna, are people who are, again, they're passionate about what they're doing. They want to know more. We all want to kind of like, come together, share our knowledge, and become better, for having come together. Now, I was laughing when you were talking about someone who said, the council person, can you paint the windowsill? Because I had one a while ago. Well, maybe last month it was, and she said, "Oh yes, your carbon monoxide detector. I'd like you to move it further away from the boiler." And I'm thinking, okay. And her,
Why?
this was it. So she said, because you see, although your boiler's quite new, so the boiler's what, maybe about 6 years old. Although your boiler's quite new, when they start getting old, they start emitting things, and that can make the carbon monoxide detector go off. Um,
That's what we
in
want.
in error.
We,
Now, well,
oh,
where
okay, error.
exactly. And I was thinking, well, if it starts emitting things, surely only carbon monoxide is going to make the detector go off. And if that's the case, she goes, oh, not dangerously, but it just happens. So if you move it away, it will stop you. It will stop. I can't. It's something like it will stop the false alarms. And I'm thinking, really? But you know, like you said, don't want to argue with these people. It's just like, okay, fine. This is what you want. So I literally moved it maybe about like 50, no, maybe like 100 millimeters away from where it was. She goes, oh, and when you've moved it, take a picture and send it to me.
Yeah, that's right, because you have to send it all in. And then, of course, you keep your documentation to say this is what I did because this is what you asked me to do. Yeah. I'd rather pay a call out charge from Ollie, my plumber, for a false carbon monoxide alarm than of somebody's kid no longer on this earth. But there you go.
Yeah.
So but so although we can be grumpy about the council, I actually quite like the fact that it's being professionalised because it's about safety. You know, we've all had crazy tenants. We've all had wonderful tenants, but we've all had crazy tenants. You know, the tenants that were smoking so much weed that it was setting the fire alarms off. So they put cling film on the fire alarms. And you're like, my darling, this is to keep you safe. Stop smoking such weed. You know, but so I think there's the professionalization, and then there's the taxation change, and then there's the whole thing about voting. So tenants used to broadly be younger and therefore were less statistically likely to vote. And as the average age of buying your first house went up and up and up, then there's that Venn diagram between tenants who now can vote, or sorry, everyone can vote, but tenants who now actually vote, and because the average age of buying your first house is older. So of course, you know, we've all known that these political changes and the protections of tenancies are going to come in because they're now voting in greater numbers, and therefore that vote has to be captured by every party. So there you go. You know, and then the Section 24, the theory about it is, well, homeowners have to pay their mortgages after tax. So should landlords. Now, I feel grumpy about it because that wasn't the deal. But what's happening is landlords are now leaving the industry, and therefore, what happens with supply and demand in a small island where they're not building enough houses? Supply goes down, demand goes up, prices go up. So effectively, very sadly, as predicted, Section 24 taxation will significantly be paid for by tenants' rents. That's not what the government wanted, but that's what the outcome is probably going to be. So there's some blips, but I think there's always people freaking out, not freaking out, that's the wrong word, sorry. There's always headlines to capture your attention, and there's always fear mongering because that sells newspapers. Because, you know, it's easier to see a bad story than a good story because we're hardwired for danger. But I still think it's a great industry to be in.
Do you know, thank you, Susie. Thank you. So, Susie is saying PRS is still a good industry to be in, and she's going to tell us exactly why. But before we go on to that, Susie, you don't you don't actively source anymore, do you? And so, can you tell us a bit more about what your work currently consists of and how?
shall, shall I be a total horror to everybody in this group? And I apologize in advance. I'm currently chatting to you from, because I have two homes. I have Bristol and Barcelona. And I apologize to everybody who's right in the middle part or the beginning part of starting their portfolio. And they're like, Suze, I'm doing 12, 14 hours a day. And I'm like, yeah, I did do that. So I'm chatting to you guys right now from my lovely kitchen in my apartment that I own in Barcelona. And this morning
Ooh.
I went and did a workout on the beach. And later on, after a beautiful fish supper, because I mean, a Spanish one, not British one, I shall go and do a run beside the beach as well. So I'm sorry, everybody, because that sounds awful, but that's the outcome of property. So that's my life now. I live half in Bristol, I travel loads, and I live half in Barcelona, and I love it. But there is a reason. There's a serious reason which we don't need to go into. But I did have a fairly significant cancer diagnosis, which I went through. So I didn't work for 3.5 years. So I just want to make sure my immune system is very strong, very high. Those lovely killer T cells are just, punting away rather nicely. So this year, NED, which is NED is no evidence of disease, which is basically as cured as a cancer patient gets. So this year, I'm staying relatively chill, relatively relaxed, and keeping the immune system super high. So I don't source anymore. I'm not currently developing, but I own a very significant property portfolio, mainly in Bristol, with the one up in Glasgow. But I am eyeing up. Ooh, look at all these opportunities, these planning opportunities, these development opportunities in Barcelona, but purely because of my own recent history of medical stuff. Because why would one do one cancer when one can do four unconnected and survive and go through it all? I'm just making sure that this year is a very gentle year. So my property work at the moment is running my own property portfolio, planning my 2025 in relatively low stress just because of my immune system to keep those lovely white blood killer T cells high. And also, I have a superb academy course with hundreds of students, and it's really fun seeing them do well at the moment. I actually have some students who've already overtaken me in net worth, which is brilliant and challenging and brilliant. But that's purely because of my recent medical blips. So my current is student HMOs, single lets, probably make a move back into service accommodation because we withdrew that the week before COVID. That was a bit of a run and a bit of a punt. And then 2025 will probably be joint venturing because I've been JV investing in other people while I've been lying and chilling out on the sofa and getting better. JVing with other people, and also looking at whether I start to build a portfolio here in Barcelona or whether I do planning gain in the UK. There you go.
Oh wow. Susie, how do I even start to unpack that? That is amazing. Well done. And I'm so, honestly, I'm so delighted with all your followers about how you've just been kicking that big C. You know, like you said, not one, not two, not three, but
I
four
mean,
on late.
what if you're going to do it, you
Wow.
go all in, yeah?
Oh wow. Honestly, do you know what? That could even be a topic for a whole day as to how you do it. But
Yeah,
I'd like you, before we finish today, if you could give us, when I ask you to give us any advice, not just if you'd give us advice on property, yes, but
love to.
also on health wise advice, that would also be amazing. Because so many of us, are I for one, I'm an idiot, and I know I am,
You
and I
are
keep
not.
telling myself I am, and yet do I do anything to even change what I'm doing? No, I still take on more than I can reasonably do because I
Yeah.
don't know my own limitations, and then and I'm floundering around like a headless chicken, and then I'm thinking, why on earth would you do this? And
To
and
yourself.
Oh,
Mhm.
honestly. And then I'm saying, so do you know what actually made me laugh one day? I was telling a friend of mine, just as I'm saying this to you, and as I'm saying this to her, I'm then saying, but do you know what? I think I'd actually like to do a Zoom thing for the next generation because now there are so many opportunities for them. And I'd really, really like for them to start thinking about it. And she said, didn't you just say that you've taken on too much? And I thought, well, actually, yes, I had just said that. But this is just like a Zoom thing. She goes, what about all the planning and stuff? And do you know what? That is, and I think as and please let no one be offended, but I think as women, that is what we do because we're so used to juggling so many balls at the same time. We tend to think we're superhuman and that we're super women. And we're not. We just are not. And you know, and that is why I call myself an idiot. But you know, if you can give us some advice there as to how to balance things out, as to
Yeah.
what to do to keep ourselves healthy, again, that would be amazing.
Well,
So,
there's a great book called hang on, let me just, it's by Dr. Kelly Turner, and it's basically people that should have died and didn't die. that's, that's my simplicity for you. And if anybody's interested in health, I've obviously find the whole thing massively fascinating now, but if anybody's watched any of the Blue Zone stuff, which is really interesting. There's a documentary um, on the Blue Zone in Netflix. It's identical. It's very interesting how identical the advice is in her book, which is called Radical Remission. So she was very interested in people who were technically given an opportunity to die and and didn't die. They were given a diagnosis that they were not supposed to, but they were diagnosed that it was terminal and incurable, and for whatever reason, their bodies were able to react to the cancer alongside all the treatment. And it's identical what she discovered with interviewing over 1,000 patients and the Blue Zone stuff. So there you go, guys. There's your shortcut. A fascinating book called Radical Remission by Kelly Turner, and they're now studying it at Harvard because it's a very sensible subject. Why, when somebody's supposed to be terminal, do they not become terminal? And the Blue Zone. So it's all things like connection, Patricia, which you're very good at. Exercise, good food, water, filtered water, of a meaning of life, some kind of spirituality or belief in something bigger than us. It's all the same human monkey links that we need. We need to be part of our tribe. We need to have a meaning. We need to exercise. We need to be healthy, and we need some downtime as well. Yeah.
oh, thank you, Susanna. So, Radical Remission by Kelly Turner, and also
Yes.
Blue Zone, which we can find on Netflix. So,
Yes.
I will repeat that, you know, maybe not, you know, once or twice before we actually finish off, so that people who maybe haven't got a pen just yet will be able to find a pen and get one, or
Yes.
or
The
or,
the
or, or listen to this.
the Netflix one is called "Live to 100: Secrets of the Blue Zones."
What, live to a
And
hundred
and
secrets of Blue Zones?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and what I think is really interesting is like anybody who's gone through the like an entrepreneur, the crazy level of hard work. Later on, they talk about work-life balance, but you normally can only really get to kind of requiring work-life balance after you understand what works smarter and what doesn't work smarter. You can't kind of usually go in and say, how do I work smarter from the beginning? Because you haven't figured out what daft things you've done that were a complete waste of time. So that classic thing of the Pareto rule, 80% of your results come from 20% of your work. But until you've done 100% of the work and then analyzed it, you're like, hey, everything works. And then you're like, oh no, only 20% of the stuff works. So I do think the same thing with health for you, Patricia, or for anybody who's listening right now. Until you've maybe hit a bit of a bump the way I did, and it was a fair bump, I have to tell you, then you don't prioritize it. And then suddenly you think, well, hang on a minute here. I think I'm going to get fresh fish from the market, eat a salad, go for a run beside the beach, and then have a swim in the sea. Because I'm activating my parasympathetic state, and I'd like to remain healthy, please. So I do sometimes think it's until you hit a brick wall or a real shock that you don't implement. So don't at all put yourself into any frustrated position. You're thriving, and nothing has hit you, and long may that continue forever.
Oh wow, amen. Thank you, Susie. And you know, I'm finding this so inspiring because often we when we're living our lives, even if it's not a major health scare, we hit road bumps or bumps in the road, and sometimes they can be a bit discouraging. And I think just being able to just say, and for me, I guess what I say is, do you know what, it could be a lot worse. It could be a lot worse. So, and then I say, thank you, God. you know you know my son, rings me. He goes, "Oh, mum, I've just been in an accident," and I go, "Are you all right?" He goes, "Yes, I am." And I go, well, "In that case, it could have been a lot worse. Don't worry about it." And then I start to say, "Where are you? This and this and this and that."
What did you do? Yes.
Yeah, exactly. How
So
did
are you kind of wondering how to reduce down your work in property, or how to move forward in well, you know how to move forward in property. You've got that nailed.
do you know what, Susanna? The thing with me is, um, I love it so much that even when I say to myself, "No more," or "just one a year," I get bored and I feel, "Oh, I'll just do this one. I'll just do that one." And then, before I know it, I'm back, right in the middle of things again. But I think, but you see, also, Susanna, yeah, by God's grace, next month I shall be 61. And I think to myself, there's a film that I really love, and it's called The Shawshank Redemption. And I remember one of the sayings there, which is, you can get busy living or you can get busy dying. And I just think, well, do you know what? I'm still enjoying what I'm doing. I love doing what I'm doing. So let me carry on doing it, even though sometimes I do kind of like just say to myself, "Oh, you silly woman. What on earth were you thinking?" Because then I just think, when I get out of bed in the morning, I say, "Thank you, God." Because there are lots of people who want to get out of bed and who cannot get out of bed. So
Yes.
again, I feel that I'm blessed and I'm favoured. So on the one hand, I think I really shouldn't complain, and on the other hand, I know that this podcast is not about me; it's about you.
But I think I was listening to a very interesting chat the other day. I think there are three stages: as the kind of worker bee, the middle management, and the chief exec. And there's nothing inherently wrong with any of those stages. And I think we all need to experience those stages to understand the processes for each. But I think where people, once they build their property portfolio, or once when they're in property, it's very easy, isn't it, as you grow and develop, to bring your old kind of mental position with you. So, and of course, property is such an asset rich and cash poor business, which is why, of course, you want to be doing things like deal packaging and flipping to bring the cash in as well. Typically, those that succeed in owning long-term property portfolios are delayed gratification people who are willing to roll up their sleeves, eat baked beans on toast for a few years, and then own houses. And literally, property was a lifesaver for me. Without huge detail, I've spent six figures on my own care and treatment because we know the condition of our beloved NHS, and I would have died if I hadn't had that opportunity to have that money. So property is an amazing lifesaver, and I didn't work for 3.5 years. I was getting better. And how can you do that, without money? So, but at the same time, it's really important that we almost move our mentality as we're moving along the rungs of the ladder. Now, there's no looking down on anybody. It's none of that. It's no thinking, "Oh, I'm the big hi ho," or anything. But the frustration you're describing, Patricia, sounds the frustration of what I would sort of say is the person in the middle. And yet, if you were to look at yourself from the outside, it's highly likely that you'd sit there thinking, "Blimey, she's the bee's knees. She's got this lovely big portfolio and she's doing really well to herself." And I think it's very easy for us as property people who are interested in the long-term assets to not pop out the other end and realize their current situation and then move their mentality forward. And I tell you, there's something that I read quite recently that was very useful to me in thinking about mentality. Because again, like you, I was a, roll your sleeves up and get on with the job girl. So Keely Hodgkinson, who just won gold at the Paris Olympics for the UK, there was a very interesting interview with her about 2 weeks ago, which said this is what made the difference. Yes, I was already working with a sports psychologist. I was already visualizing what it would be like to win medals. I've already won medals. But what we did was we visualized what it would be like to win the gold medal. Okay, fine. And she said, so I mentally placed myself in that position. Then every decision I made, every piece of behavior I chose to behave with came from the place of, I already won the gold medal, so what decisions and behaviors am I going to choose now? And that's that, people talk about mindset, and it's a bit woolly and airy sometimes when people are talking about mindset, but that's a really good shortcut for mindset. If I am in the position of XYZ, whatever position is a person wants to get to, multi-million pound property portfolio, or what, 6-figure, 7-figure income, um, I may not be there yet, but what decisions would I make were I to be there? So would I still pile up my plate, Patricia, or would I not? Or would I choose high value activities? Or and it's interesting to kind of look back and say, I may not be there yet, but being as this is where I want to get to, what behaviors and decisions and thought processes would I take? What becomes a big deal to me and what becomes a small deal to me? And of course, that changes. And so that's about kind of moving your mindset on in a relatively practical way. It helped her win gold for the Olympics. So I'm sure, I'm sure it's going to help us with our mindsets.
Oh, Susie, thank you. Because even now, I'm thinking my brain is like whirling around, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, yeah, that really resonates with me. I think So I'm hoping that people in the room and people who listen to the podcast will find this amazingly helpful, because I certainly am right now. Thank you so much, Susie. Right. So now, Susie, your company is one of the very few property educational companies with a listing on Trustpilot. How are you finding that process? Do you find it fair? Do you find it's biased? Do you find that people go there to gripe? Do you find that can you just tell us what your experience has been working with people over time?
Um, so first I need to say that because I'm only back this year, we have a recommend. So my colleague Ian is also in the Clubhouse room. So big shout out to Ian. She and I have a project called Recommendation Project. And we haven't yet started to look at things. So I'll tell you, I'm a little behind on that. We haven't yet looked at things like our Google reviews and our Trustpilot for quite a while, and that's purely because of my little medical blip. So what I found before when we were kind of running our what I'd call our recommendations project. Now, by that, what I mean is a fair and decent recommendations project. We've got hundreds and hundreds of videos of students. We've got hundreds of case studies of students. We've got hundreds and hundreds of recommendations. Anytime somebody says, "Hey, you're pretty good," we collect it, and we have a spreadsheet that links back to where the location came from. Not that we're ever going to get investigated with Advertising Standards Agency, but I want evidence where the information came from. The date, the name, where it came from, where the link is, so that it's very clear that it's true. But what we found in the past on things like Google reviews or Trustpilot is generally every now and again we'd ask people, would you mind awfully popping a review on, we know you're quite pleased, so that'd be lovely if you could. And then what you'll occasionally get is the outliers. So you'll occasionally get people who are 5 stars and you're like, oh, that's adorable of you, thank you. And then a couple of times you're going to get somebody who's grumpy. We've had a couple of tenants reviewers, and you think, but my sweetheart, you ran away without paying rent, so of course we CCJ'd you. So I think the main thing, and we had a lady that I blessed her years ago when I was doing a deal packaging business. She just didn't get her funding, and after it was very early in my experience as a deal packager, and after a month or two, it became clear that she hadn't lifted a finger to get her funding, and I had to kick her out the deal and pull somebody in that was going to get their funding. So obviously she was annoyed with me, so she gave me a bad review. So we had to kind of. So what I found with things like Trustpilot or any of the other recommendation processes, if you explain without kind of saying, well, you're the idiot, because they're not, they got a point of view. If you just explain and say, well, actually, you're a tenant and you owed us money, and therefore we had to proceed with legal action against you. Or I'm sorry, we got that wrong. If you genuinely think you got it wrong, then that's perfectly okay. You're never going to get everything right in property, and property is a big old moving ship. So what the general so A, we need to get back onto that, and B, what we used to do was just answer and either thank you so much, that's very kind of you, or actually we, with complete respect, we don't agree with you, that isn't how we saw the situation, but please do get in touch, kind of thing. um So my experience generally of working people, because I do maths, as you know, Patricia, 98% of investors, 98% of people I've worked with are amazing, and 2% of investors fall into the camp of either prima donnas, where you think, oh, I think I don't want to work with you anymore. You know, how high can you jump, Susanna? You need to phone me at 9:30 at night. You need to do everything. No, no, this is a process. Or non-committals. Now, non-committals are going to bounce away if you've got a good process to say, look, you need to have a commitment level before you move to the next process. You know, whether as a deal packager you have to pay a fee, you have to sign the documentation, you know, you have to put some skin in the game. So your non-committals will bounce away at that point, but your prima donnas, they will stay, and that when you do decide, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to move you out of my work, they're going to cause a great big stink, and they're the people that will jump on and be grumpy about you. So you just got to hold your nerve and try and do it as respectfully as possible. But the way I find these days to look for prima donnas and try and remove them before you kind of get into working with them is prima donna always wants a one-to-one service, and they want more and more and more, and I've only had a couple of prima donna investors, but I've had enough to notice the pattern. And so if you put them in a group from the very beginning, it's not their natural habitat. They don't like it because they want the white glove prima donna service. And so if you say, well, actually, my process is that everybody wins collectively together. You know, when I was running a deal business, we released deals to the entire group. And we had a prima donna, I won't say his second name, but his first name was Mike. And I'd started out in a one-to-one service. He'd bought 7 houses from us. He earned a fortune buying houses from us. But he really didn't like the idea that I was now going to move to a group for my deal sourcing business. And we would be releasing deals by text and by an 8 to 10 page deal report in the group. He really didn't like that because, of course, he got an amazing service in the first year of my business. So he caused a bit of difficulty, was a bit noisy. So by setting up your business that says, together we rise, and one person doesn't get a better service than another one, everyone gets the identical service. Your prima donnas tend to not get attracted to you that way, so you tend to eliminate more of them in advance. But it's only 2%, and you just got to, pull your socks up and say, I'm terribly sorry, we can't work together anymore. And they're going to be a bit noisy, but that's off they go.
Honestly, from what you're saying, I'm just thinking, yep, yep, yep,
Are
and
you
I'm sure that everyone in the
Are you
audience as
naming
well.
names
They,
in your head without
yep,
naming them
yep,
out loud? Yes.
yep, 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 and I'm just thinking, yep, yep, I can see that now. And but do you know the reason why I brought up your Trustpilot reviews, Susie? I thought they were absolutely amazing.
Oh, that's
In that
nice.
the negative ones, like you say, and you were so professional about dealing with them. So there was this, and again, I will mention this because it literally just made me laugh. Um, so there was this negative review from a Jane, and
That's my
Susie,
lady. That's my lady.
right? So Susie and her team went back and said, we've gone over our records and we don't have a Jane. Please do contact us. Let's just see where, your unhappiness is coming from. And I'm thinking, yep, you have these people, some of them can be cowardly as well. So if they have an issue with you, why not just say, oh, this is the issue that I have, end of. Why go on to talk? And it could even be somebody who's just trying to just badmouth your business, because lots of people
Yeah.
do that anyway, because they're either envious or they're worried, they feel very insecure in their own businesses, and they can't feel good about themselves unless they're trying to rubbish somebody else. So you
Mm.
never quite know with these kind of like things, do you? And I was
No.
just really impressed with your Trustpilot listing, and I just thought
Ah.
amazing,
Well,
absolutely amazing.
I will tell you, and everybody, it doesn't come naturally. What does come is if you get a grumpy review, I stomp around, I breathe smoke, My stomach hurts. I get really upset. I go for a run, I chill out, and then we start writing a reply. But we want to investigate. Like, if we've done anything wrong, like, let us know, because then either we'll agree or disagree with you. But yeah, so that one we think was the lady that after 2 months we had to put out the deal because she didn't get her funding. But we don't know because obviously she didn't come back to us. Yes, yes. It doesn't come naturally, Patricia. But I do think it's also kind of respecting that they feel grumpy for some reason. So, try and say, open up, and the other thing, if you get internet trolls, which, in Britain, we do have a tiny little bit of a tall poppy syndrome. And I do think that slightly doesn't assist folks wanting to stick the head above the parapet, because you are going to get a bit of grumping and chundering about you. We once had somebody run a bit of a long time ago, and it wasn't true, but a bit of a "Rrr." And so a couple of people joined in, and I thought, I don't know you. So we had a spreadsheet, and it was called the troll spreadsheet. And we put in every person who put in a comment that was completely libelous or untrue. And then we found out their contact details, and then I phoned them up and said, "Hey, let's have a chat." And it was a complete process. It wasn't I want to phone you up and then berate you. It was, you're trolling us. So what we're going to do is we're going to identify who you are, what your contact details are. Have we annoyed you in any shape or form? If not, then I'm going to phone you up because it'd be useful for you to understand circumstances and have a conversation. And do you know what? They tended to stop trolling you after you left voice messages on their phones, which were very kind and very nice. So that
Right.
was called our troll process. I don't know if I'd recommend it or not, but it gave me some level of comedy anyway.
Oh wow. Do you know what, Susie? I am so impressed by how professional you are in the things that you do. And I remember when we met, and you were telling you were telling a group of us about how, even though you knew how to teach, when you decided to go into property education, you actually took on someone to train you on how to teach other people. And I just thought, that level of dedication is not common. It's not something that I've seen at all, actually, other than with you. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, for anybody that knows me, so Andrew, you've known me for quite a long time. You may be familiar, Andrew, with my interest in property, which says, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, because that's how I think. So that's great if you're a do this, if you're a task-based person, the way I am, really, but not so cool if you're a people-based person, or if you respond in different ways. And so in the early days, when people were saying, yeah, see, do you see, Andrew's just commented and said, love it. Well, Andrew, you must match me. We must match. Whereas for somebody else who's much softer, just being told like 4 hours of coaching from Susannah, do this, do this, do this on my mentoring program is no use to them at all. After 20 minutes, they're gone. So it was recognizing your flaws and recognizing that the 5 love languages, where people, their acts of service, positive language, hugs, gift giving, and time spent. And one person's love language is very different to another person's love language. And therefore, so for example, my son, who lives around the corner from me in Barcelona, for me, it's probably positive language, hugs, and spending time. For him, it's acts of service. So when I came in from Bristol last week, he's done lots and lots of DIY jobs in my flat. Um, and would I have loved him to meet me and have a hug? Yeah, because I adore the man, because he's a man now. But his love language was, Mom, I've done all this DIY for you, So it's kind of having to recognize his language and my language. And it's the same for teaching, isn't it? Just because I'm a list kid, and Andrew clearly is a list kid as well, doesn't mean to say that the students are going to best get the benefit from the teaching if I teach in the way that I would like to absorb. So I've got to be aware that there's other ways of absorbing information, because the outcome is not Susannah teaches. The outcome is that the students and the people who are training themselves through my education are are going to succeed in property, because that's the outcome I want. I think Andrew's just commented, oh my God, the lists. Whoops. And so I wanted to really figure out what is the objective of the teaching. It's so that the students can be successful. Okay, what's the best way to try and make them successful? Give them the information in the language they can understand, and yet, one person is a list person, another person is a visual person, another person is an audio person. So I need to try and hit all the bases, even though I'm a list person.
You see, but this is what I mean, Susanna, when I say that you are so professional, because a lot of us, myself included, do it the way that we know how. and and clearly the objective is the person who's absorbing the information. But we just, personally, I just think, people who don't like my style will, like you say, bounce. And I'll be looking for people who like my style, and then we'll just be, just a friendly group. But and that is why I particularly admired what you did, which was, I'm going to make myself be able to reach positively um, a wider range of people than people who are just like myself. So admire that.
Oh,
Lots of
thank you.
respect.
Well, hopefully the results are in the results for the guys. That's the important bit. When they're building houses or buying flats or, building their property portfolios, that's the result really. Or actually that's the midterm results, isn't it, Patricia? The end results is, are they spending more time with the people they love? The reason why they got into property. Are they living the life the way they want to live their life, rather than maybe the way the kind of industrial age taught us to live life? So I guess that's the result. Oh, I don't always get it right though. I still love a list.
Honestly, lists are amazing. But you know what? And this is why we're all very different. You know, you love a list. I hate lists. I hate I hate and for somebody who practiced as a solicitor for years, you sometimes I say things about myself and I think, well, how on earth did you, why did you go into that profession, and how did you survive in that profession, how did you thrive in that profession? And I just think, oh, well, maybe it's as I've grown older that I've hated these things. But no, I've always just wanted to be a free spirit, do my own thing, think my own way. And sometimes that it can work brilliantly, in court. I didn't do, like, big courts. I did like smaller courts, tribunals. I did advice. But being able to just literally just think outside the box and just pick up a point that nobody else had thought of, I absolutely loved that. Lists, constraints, just kill me already.
But I wonder if it kind of relates back to property again, because if you had a very good grounding, and clearly you're a woman that does what she says, delivers well, goes deep, attention to detail. So if you've got this very strong grounding, a bit like an amazing composer, they all have strong grounding, or even Picasso. Picasso, obviously I'm in Barcelona, Picasso, there's a Picasso museum here. So he had an incredibly strong grounding in formal art and technically competent. And then once he got the technical competence, he then lifted himself to the next level and became very creative with that technical competence, and went into all his, very kind of out there pictures, but knowing there's a real underpinning of technical competence. Or Dali, just up the road from me in near Barcelona is the Dali Triangle, where you go to his home, you go to his crazy, amazing museum, and you go to the theatre that he's built. Again, an incredibly creative artist, but very technically competent underneath it all, Patricia. So I wonder if your creativity can flourish because you've got a base of technical competence. And I think that's what we need in property, a base of technical competence. And then on top of that, you add in the cherry on top, the icing on the cake and the cherry on top. And that's all about the decor or the student type or the creative finance, but in a good way, in a law abiding way. Any of those things, or just the entrepreneurial drive. But I do think we've got to think about what property is there for, to do for us and our families. Why are we doing it? Are we underneath its cosh, or does it serve us? Because I've seen a lot of people get into property and not be able to kind of come through and get out the other side, and they're constantly in this in the loop because they're overstretched, they're over leveraged, they're over geared, they've over mortgaged themselves because they've gotten a little bit excited in the eyes about how many properties have you got, rather than what loan to value you've got and what profitability have you got. So I think it's always realizing that property needs to deliver to us rather than us deliver to property. That's what I think, anyway.
Wow, Susanna. Wow, wow, wow. And do you know, as you were talking, I was just thinking, Susie, you should really just be like an agony aunt, because when anyone comes to you
You're making me
with their,
laugh.
you will just sort them out immediately. Because you're absolutely right. As you were saying it, I know myself. I've been myself for forever. I was thinking, because even before law, I was a scientist. My first degree was in microbiology. So I guess with all of that, knowing boundaries and being rigid, I was then, I then thought, oh yeah, done that. I can do something else. So thank you for, because every now and again I think to myself, why do you not want to be constrained? Why do you feel the need to just float, just be? And thank you. You've helped me sort that out. Susie, you will not know how much you've done for me during this conversation.
That,
Honestly,
that's
thank
that's a
you.
that's because you're a high achiever, as many people are in property, isn't it? You're a high achiever. You always want to do your best, but sometimes high achievers, they stretch themselves and they sort of turn themselves a wee bit inside out. Speaking as one myself, So we sometimes need to go, wait, so we need to know the technical details of a CO2 detector and whether it's going to be moved 100 mil or 10 mil away from a boiler, and we need all of that kind of stuff. We need to know how often to change the smoke heads, but then we also need to know, how do we pull together really interesting deals? How do we pull together funding? How do we buy projects in ways that other people don't necessarily think of, in order to get creative as well? How do we design up, and how do we retail properties? How do we flip? All, yeah, a property's an art and a science, and I love it most of the time. There are moments, of course. Yes.
So, Susie, what you will not know, because today is your first day on Clubhouse, is that the microphone was recently changed, and sometimes you're tapping it to unmute or mute, and it's non
Ah,
responsive. You tap it, and it brings up a new page. And that is not what you want.
okay.
You really want it to unmute so that you can talk.
Okay.
So, if there are pauses, that is what is going on with me. So,
Okay.
you're
Thank you.
absolutely right. So, for the people who will be listening to this on the podcast, can you just share some do's and don'ts and some advice, some tips? Save the tapping for the tap dance on is what Andrew's just said. Yes. Um,
I've been enjoying Andrew's comments all the way through.
I know. Do you know what? This is fascinating, Susie. Um, I'm in a room on a Thursday. If you're ever available and it's at 8:30 in the morning, you will be more than welcome to join me. And it
Oh,
is it is such good fun. On
that
here
would be good.
Thursdays, 8:30 till 9:30 usually. So Susie, any do's and or don'ts,
Yeah.
any advice, anything? Oh, actually, before we go into that, where do you think, so you've already said that the way that things are going is, it's going to be the more professional landlords are actually going to be the ones who survive and thrive. So that's all good. But let's assume that someone isn't that way inclined. Is there still a way for them to make, in your opinion, for them to make money in property? And if so, how? If you wouldn't mind sharing with us.
I definitely think everybody has to move. When I'm saying professional, I'm not meaning rigid. I'm just meaning If we go back to the school system of A's, B's, C's, D's, and E's, you've got to make sure your output is an A or a B plus. Otherwise, you're just not. Property's too. Property's a big swing that could knock you off your perch, and nobody wants that. So I definitely think you've got to aspire to really good quality delivery, whatever the delivery is, whether you're delivering to a JV partner or whether you're delivering a flip or whether you're delivering. I give you a very minor example. Angelique, who's part of the team that manages my property portfolio, she texted me this morning saying, "Hey, this fridge freezer has given itself up. We've tried to look at repairs. It's not cost effective. Do I have your permission to buy another one? It's 300 and something quid." I think I was 10 seconds before replying, "Yes, please. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it." So that's that kind of A-lister landlord that says fridge freezer broke, fridge freezer replaced. 10 seconds to the letting agent, they'll get it organized. The fridge freezer comes in tomorrow. So although that's kind of attention to detail, small scale stuff in the grand scheme of life, you've got tenants who are not grumbling. They're like, wait, this is nice. Nice new fridge freezer within 24 hours. Love it. So you've got to provide good quality, whatever the thing is. So I don't think if somebody's not going to be professional, I don't think there's going to be space for them as things go forward for two reasons. The legislation side, because they'll get caught out on, HMOs, and there are additional fines coming in, and you can end up being not a person who's able to hold licenses because they may have been incorrect on HMO licenses, so you've got to have your standards quite high. You've got to know your standards, implement them, and job done. But then on the other side, is there room for creativity in property? Yeah, there's massive room for creativity in property and for fun and enjoyment and entrepreneurship and looking outside the box. Yeah, hugely so. But you've got to be nimble. And so what am I thinking about here? Service accommodation, obviously we shut that down the week before COVID. We're now looking at opening it back up again. There's some really interesting schemes, as long as you're very high quality, and quite a few of my students are doing this right now. I'm not, but they are, where they're supplying assisted living to certain types of tenants. And they're doing amazing work in that. So they're moving into third sector, which is the charitable sector. They're a commercial provider, but they're very high quality commercial provider to the charitable sector. Now, who would have thought of that 10 years ago? And now they know that they're helping people who are in very difficult situations. But again, it's supply and demand commercially because the councils don't have the housing. So there's a commercial reason to do it, but also a kind of creative human reason to do it as well. So I think, but you have to have high standards. I don't think you can get into property and not have professionalism. And some of that is also about cash flow. So if people's cash flows aren't really tightly managed, they're going under. 50% of property developers, not landlords, developers go bust. 50% become very rich, and 50% pretty much go bust. And they're not normally because they're running an unprofitable project. It's normally that they've run out of cash. So if you're not professional and if you're not projecting your cash flow and saying, "Whoop, looks like we got a problem, Houston, in the third quarter," and you're not raising that cash now, either through formal lending like banks and such like, or informal lending through correctly done private fundraising, then you ain't staying in business. So yeah, I think professionalism rules, but you don't need to be uptight about it. You can have fun.
Wow, so true though, Susie. So true. And it's so sad about the number of people who are going out of business, and there's so many more. Where you see these sites which are half built out, and they're being
Oh,
passed around.
yes. I mean, on the one hand, and can I say, I think that is, I'm looking, this is my very first time on Clubhouse. I think that is my lovely Chris Ma has just joined. If it is, Chris, big hello to you. Uh, oh, and so is my lovely friend Anthony Davis has just joined, who was giving me lessons on how to manage Clubhouse earlier. Thanks, Anthony.
Welcome, Anthony and Chris.
So yeah, sites that are half developed out are both heartbreaking, but also what an opportunity. If you can fix the problem, and we've bought many a site or joint ventured or packaged it onto other investors and gotten a really significant fee. So you are going to be when you're looking for a discounted property, there's going to be a reason why that property is discounted. It's either the vendor's situation, they moved abroad, all of these things. Very sadly, they're getting divorced, or they. I once had somebody who was clearly felt that themselves might be guilty, and clearly thought they were going to jail because they were going up in court. So he wanted to sell the property really quickly. So I'm not laughing, but it was sort of funny. So you've got the vendor's situation, or you've got the property's situation. If the vendor's already gone bust, it's now back into the bank, and it may well be that there are significant redress problems that you need to do with the property. So, all of the usuals, all of the health and safety stuff, all of the gas, the electricity, the plumbing, you're probably going to have to do rectifications. It's going to cost you a bit more. But of course, that's an inherently larger risk. And therefore, with an inherently larger risk, the price goes down. We've certainly bought sites where people have just downed tools and walked out. And then we've had to come on site, and you've got to do a scope of works and say, well, we think it's going to cost this much, but we know we haven't yet uncovered X, Y, Z. So here's the provisional budget for if it goes Pete Dong. But you should be getting a site where somebody's gone bust really discounted, because you're going to have to backtrack on the work. And the other problem with site where somebody's gone bust on it is very few builders want to take it on. Understandably so. It's very difficult for them to quote, because they also don't know until they uncover the work what's done well, what's been done badly. So you are limiting your pool of quality builders unless you've got amazing builders who are really comfortable taking on a bit of an unknown. And at that point, you're probably on day rate, and day rate is a tough one to manage if you're managing a larger site. So you've got to be absolutely on it like a rocket for day rate. So yeah, I mean, there's opportunities, but nobody gets here without picking up a few opportunities.
So true, so true. And I just think that there are so many opportunities out there right now, like the ones that you've just identified, but also I've been talking to, like I mentioned earlier, the next generation, in that the opportunities for them are just immense. And not so much about building large portfolios, but about making some money from property, about being comfortable within their own space. Because I'm also an advocate for, you don't have to have, a million properties or even 10 properties, and you don't have to have like £1 billion or even £1 million. You have to do what is right for you, what's going to make you happy, and what's going to make you money, and is it worth your while doing it? And if it is, that's still, as far as I'm concerned, a win-win situation. So
Yes, a real success. I
yeah,
agree.
yeah. And all the younger people coming up right now, a lot of them don't even believe that they can. And maybe they're watching YouTube videos about somebody who's building, a 60 unit, kind of like block of flats or whatever. And I just wonder why you're not there. Why are you looking at that? Yes, of course you can't do that now. And would you even want to do that now? But anyway, that's a story for another day.
But
So
that's a bit like going to the gym, isn't it? I used to do a lot of weightlifting, and so you're not going to go in and back squat 100 kilos straight away. You're going to go in and squat an empty bar, and then put 5 kilos on the bar, or 2.5, then five, then tens, then 15s and 20s, and then eventually you're going to go up in increments of 3 kilos. And the people who succeed are typically the kind of measured longer term planners, and the people that go bust in spectacular fashion have gone from maybe building a couple of houses to doing 160 flats. And you're like, my darling, you don't have the muscles yet. Your sinews, your bones aren't strong enough, your muscles aren't developed, the sinews aren't working. It's too big a job. And I learned this actually not so much in myself, because I don't know whether it's me being a woman that I decided not to kind of go to that level, but I learnt it when I took a builder who was a highly competent builder at the kind of 30 to 60 grand renovation. And he and I had worked together for 7 years. Good guy, nice, steady, numerous projects a year. He was one of my three sets of builders, but he was the constant. And then I took him and said, right, let's move you on to a £250,000 project and build a house at the same time. Now he could have said no, but he also was ambitious. So he was like, great, but it fell apart. It was a bit of a tragedy, really. I mean, we got the house built, and I ended up getting but I ended up getting it built by somebody else, and the £250,000 renovation by somebody else as well. because he had to come off site. So what I learned was the animal that can do a 50 grand renovation cannot move immediately to a 250 grand renovation and build a 400 grand worth house. It's just not. So I learned it painfully through my own business, but at least at slight arm's length. And I think that's the same with property developers. You know, the organizational skills and requirements are significantly different. So nice and steady, but no, when you're young, nobody wants to hear nice and steady. But not, you know, nice and steady will build your multi-million-pound property portfolio. Anthony, you're not a nice and steady guy. Anthony's an absolute fiend when it comes from making it happen in property. He's got amazing ambition and fulfills it and delivers it. But then he works incredibly hard. So that's the result. That's the reason.
Amazing. So, people who are listening to this, you might want to go back, look for the guest series with Anthony Davies. So, it is that Anthony that Susie's talking about, and listen to what he had to say. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. So, Suzie, I can't believe that we've been talking for over an hour, because usually we kind of like talk for about 45 minutes and then I waffle and waffle and waffle. I'm very good at waffling. Do you know what? I know my own strengths. um, but I've I've just found talking to you absolutely amazing, really inspiring and very informative, and I've learnt a lot. So, two books that you, well, no, two things that you recommended. So, Radical Emissions is a
Radical remissions. Yes.
remissions. Sorry, I
Yes.
can't even
Dr.
read
Kelly
anymore.
Turner.
By
Yeah.
Dr. Kelly Turner,
Yes.
and also there's a program on Netflix, Live to 100.
Yeah. Secrets of the
Secrets
Blue
of
Zones.
the Blue Zones.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
those two, Susie has recommended to us. So let's not just listen to these things. Let's, when we listen, put stuff into action. Let us take, the stuff that we're learning, and let us incorporate it into our lives, because that is how we grow and that is how we become better people. Otherwise, this would just be what, an hour by the time I've added my, my pre stuff and my finishing stuff. And that would be about, an hour and a quarter, an hour and a half. That is an hour and a half that no one's ever going to get back. So let us take these things and really kind of like embrace them and make ourselves better. So, Susie, finishing off, what tips and advice would you give to, one, somebody who's looking to come into the industry, two, somebody who's already in the industry and are looking to grow, and three, somebody who thinks they're absolutely killing it in the industry?
Okay, the coming into industry is relatively simple. Typically, people that come into the industry don't have a huge amount of money. So I would prefer people to not consider rent to rent, because you're becoming a letting agent of somebody else's capital asset that is going to gain in capital growth. I would prefer people to come in through the deal sourcing route. That's my own preference, because when you deal package, deal source, you work with investors, you find your skills to find discounted deals, you put them together. So you're developing up two very core skills that are going to serve you well right the way through. I mean, Anthony and I today had a conversation, and I mean, Anthony was one of my, I think, were you my first investor? I think, Anthony, all those years ago, and those core skills are still there, aren't they? About, and now we're dear friends, but about how do you find discounted deals, and how do you find the funds, and how do you put it together in a way that works for everybody. So deal packaging does that, and it's a great training ground. Plus, you make really good money at it. So that would be my first one. Somebody who's in the thick of it. All right, this is so someone who's in the absolute thick of it, and I can think of plenty of friends who are in the absolute thick of it right now. Um, I would say the most game changer thing to do is to monitor the most valuable thing you've got, which is your time. So there's a really interesting book called The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey. I'll just check the title to make sure it is that one. Stephen Covey, absolutely amazing book. The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People sounds a bit, ugh, but brilliant. And he really talked about monitoring your time, and where I would like property people to focus their time is 40% working on their business, and 30% on deals and investors. So way much more time working on your business and improving yourself. But he also talked about identify the urgence and the importance. So someone that's in the thick of it, right? And many of you guys probably are right now. You're just like, it's like you're driving in a thunderstorm with no windscreen, and the snow, snow and the hail is coming at you, Phil, and you're trying to dodge it a bit. So it often will feel that everything is urgent. And I think the really good advice is to divide the things that are coming at you into urgence and importance. Urgence are typically somebody else's agenda. I need you to do this by this date. Um, and if you continue on only delivering on the urgents, you're putting out fires the whole time, but you're not making the property fire safe. If you then say, look, these are my task lists, it's overwhelming, there's too much to do. What are my urgents and what are my importance? And out of every three, you do two importance and one urgent. It's going to feel super uncomfortable for a period of time because you've got far too many urgents when you're in the thick of it. But over time, you end up putting fires out completely and you end up having a systematized business. It will take a while. You'll have 3 months of major discomfort because people will be screaming at you for XYZ. But if you just say, look, I'm going to do two importance and one urgent, and by an important, but what I probably mean is in the middle of this firefighting, running, three projects at a time, you're going to incubate future relationships with investors. And you're going to run around at the time like a headless chicken thinking, I haven't got time for this. there's no time to have a nice coffee with somebody. I've got to be on site. I've got to order the radiators. But if you don't attend to the importance that are quiet, that nobody really, there's no noise about it, in 6 months' time or in a year's time, when you want to take the next level and JV with great people, there's nobody incubated ready to JV with. So, one urgent, I need to order the radiators. Two importance, I need to incubate funds and good quality relationships for 6 months to a year's time. Is a very difficult trick to pull off because you'll naturally feel like solving all the urgents all the time. And then somebody that's gone all the way through, figure out who you are and what you want, because when you've gone all the way through, you're going to have changed as a person. So are all the things that you wanted when you started or when you're in the middle of it and didn't have a huge amount of time to think it through, are they still what you want now? So take that strategic time out. So one way to do it is maybe every 3 months go away for a weekend, turn everything off and then do a little bit of introspection, because I think we can be very easily fooled by ourselves and be not busy fools, because I don't want to be negative about ourselves, but I think we can easily stay busy to stop the noise of thinking. And so, one of the benefits of having had 3.5 years recuperating, uh, where I had to work on my immune system, was quiet times and gentle times. And thinking, okay, have I? And of course, I significantly changed during that time, or the changes bubbled through because they were no longer hidden by, oh, I've got to do this now. It was like, no, I have to make my tummy gurgle. That's my parasympathetic and my killer T cells coming to the fore. And so that sitting with the discomfort then says, who are you and what do you want? And does what you've built still suit you? So don't be trapped by what you've built, but ensure that a property is serving you and you're not serving it on the other end. That's my thinking anyway. So I don't know if any of that resonated with you,
You know,
Patricia.
as I'm thinking, wow, and I want to unmute and go, wow. I'm touching the mute button and it's not allowing me to. So that is frustrating. No, amazing, amazing, absolutely amazing, Susie. Really, really, really. Do you know what? I am so happy that we're having this conversation today, and I just hope that people can really appreciate everything that you've shared with us. But before we actually finish, can you just tell the listeners how they can get in touch with you, how you might be able to help them, um, if you're in a position to do so,
I'd love to.
what services you offer, and the type of people that might actually suit, so that they can get in touch with you? Because I think people should really just know that if they come to you, they're going to be moving their journeys on in leaps
That's
and bounds.
That's the plan. I would love to. And have you noticed in the notes, Anthony said, yes, I always mentioned that I was your first lender. You still had a job, but I could see your passion and ability, something I got right. Smiley face. Yeah, Anthony was my very first investor, and he was a brilliant guy to work with. And now he works with lots and lots of other people. Yeah, so thank you, Anthony. I would love people to get in touch. I really would. We are so there's the easiest way to get in touch is probably either email into us to say hi, and you can get the email from our website, thegoodpropertycompany.co.uk. And our email obviously is info@thegoodpropertycompany.co.uk, or come in through any of the social medias and say hi. And Ian, who's on the Clubhouse tonight, is one of the team who just loves having good comments from people and connecting with them. Ian's just really brilliant at that. And so you'll come in and my team will say hi to you first, and then the comments always get passed across to me on Slack, and then we respond to them. We give people loads of stuff for free. I didn't have much money when I started, so I'm quite conscious. We've got like 8 free checklists, a free 102-page download if you guys haven't downloaded it, called the 101 Lessons Pack from our website, which is thegoodpropertycompany.co.uk, or YouTube. We've just hit over 2 million views, which is kind of fun. And I've been, the YouTubes have been going out for many years, so you can document from the beginning to now, and go into the playlists of the subject that the person wants to really learn about. So that's all the kind of free or connecting stuff. And then from a training point of view, we have two really superb academies. We have the Deal Packager Academy and the Flipping Academy. Now, we have other training programs as well. We're going to do a retreat in Barcelona, which should be fun. But those are probably the main two for people to start off having a look at. And I quite regularly, at the moment anyway, do live webinars. And we're getting great results with the Academy members. And it's really fun to see them kind of come in going, whoa, and then just absolutely, bit between the teeth, and then the projects start coming out. And it's very nice to see projects happening, and it's very good to see them working with each other, funding deals for each other, working together in JV partnerships, that kind of thing. So there you go. Loads of free stuff. Thegoodpropertycompany.co.uk. Oh, there you go. Ian's popping the link in. Thank you so much, Ian. YouTube, free stuff, loads of downloads, and then come in and contact us on any of the social medias, particularly Instagram, but any of them will work.
And if I can also just add, so Susie's company is a member of the Property Educators Accreditation Scheme. So
Yeah.
that is a scheme where educators have said, do you know, there are too many people out there whose money is being taken and they're not being given good value for money. We are going to self regulate to make sure that people do actually get good value for their money, and we will hold ourselves accountable. So Susie's company is a member of that Property Educators Accreditation Scheme. Simply amazing.
Yes.
Susie, you are,
Started by Cyril Thomas, who's a super guy. Sorry, jumping in.
he is, isn't he? He is.
Yes.
Um, but do you know what? You are a legend, Miss Susie Cole. And do you know what?
In my own bath, I am.
Do you know, and when I met Susie, I said to Susie, I said, Susie, you look so much younger
Yes,
than
you
your
did say
profile
that.
pictures. And full of energy. Honestly, so inspiring. Susie, thank you so much for coming on this show. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I will put this in the podcast. It will be done today, and I will publish it today, and I shall send you a link. But
Oh,
it's
we'd
been
love that.
absolutely wonderful just having you on here. And this is a podcast that I definitely will be listening back on. So thank you so much. And
Thank
for
you
everyone,
very much. I really, really appreciate coming on, and thank you for. Do you see the get out of your comfort zone? Thank you for the invite to Clubhouse. I had to phone Anthony earlier and say, could you just tell me how to do this? After I googled it and went on YouTube for a while. So thank you.
oh, thank you so much.